Today I'm here to talk about social media and communication in the modern world. That's sort of the general tagline. I've kind of got this outlined into several different ways, several different routes that we're going to go. We're going to talk about communication through sort of history and how social media may not, well, it really isn't. I mean, if you've looked at it, it's not, the concepts underlying it are no different than standard communication. That should be pretty obvious once we dig into that a bit. But there will be some interesting things that will come out of that discussion. We're going to talk a little bit about privacy and identity. I know that privacy has been a topic that's been on the radar at this conference so far, and so I'm excited to dig into that with you. We're going to talk about success theater, which is the idea that we create the brand that is ourselves. And I'm a marketing guy, so it's always intriguing to talk about brands, but then to take that and use social media to apply it to ourselves kind of makes me a little uncomfortable, but also a little interested at the same time. And then we're going to talk about so what, like who cares about all this, and I hope you do. And then take a look at a couple case studies. Some of these focus on companies, but what's really interesting in this is the people behind the messages that are happening there. Looking at some fail moments and then some silver lining moments. What happens that's good in all of this, and then some conclusions, and then at the end, if we still have some time, we'll talk about a little bit of sort of what the future looks like in terms of how communication is being shaped by this technology. So here's the topic: social media and communication in the modern world. My name is Jason DeBoer-Moran, MBA for that authority, so you all know I'm an authority, I guess. And then I work for Concordia University St. Paul. I'm actually the director of marketing and communications there. I came into that role from the IT side of the house, which a lot of people go, well, that's weird. Since when does an IT guy like talking to people? But in reality, what we keep seeing more and more is marketing is being shaped so heavily by technology that transition just sort of happened naturally for me. And so it was really exciting for me to move into that role. I'm also a professor at Concordia. I teach in the Strategic Communication Master's program that's available at the master's level at the university. And then I also teach in our BA in marketing courses as well. You can reach me via email or Twitter. I'm New Coventry on Twitter, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we get going. And then Concordia University logo, because I'm the marketing guy at Concordia. Another authority piece is that I did co-author a book with two other faculty at Concordia. It's called The Manager's Pocket Guide to Social Media. It's sort of a brief glancing overview, really quick fact information for managers who are in the field and who have the sort of like whiz kid young marketing guy who's saying, hey, we should be on the social media. And so it's really to help people kind of get a sense of what this means. Generally, probably not the audience that's sitting in this room, but it's interesting to say the least. When I'm biased because I wrote it, so I'm going to say that. So, talking about the history of communication, social media comes about from the basic desire of humans to communicate with one another. It starts as simple as we go back to the tin can telephones that you have made when you were kids to communicate with the talk string between you and talking from one person to another. That's great. One-to-one communication. I can talk to my friend. I can talk to my friend through that. But now we have this evolution through social media. And the example that I like to give is my grandfather, or my father probably, looking out at the snow and like, oh, we don't have a snowblower. So what are we going to do? Well, my neighbor has a snowblower and I'm interested in a snowblower. So I'm going to ask my neighbor, hey, can you tell me about that snowblower you have? I think I'd like to buy one. And that one-to-one relationship is where that communication starts. And that's great for, let's say, whoever the brand is that makes that snowblower. The neighbors are communicating about it. Somebody's deciding to make a purchase because their friend does it. What social media has done is now that conversation has evolved from one-to-one to one-to-many. Is that I can go online now and say, hey, I need to buy a snowblower. Anybody have any recommendations? And all of a sudden, there could be a snowblower fan club that can contact me and say, oh, Toro's the best, or oh, you want this one or that one. There are forums out there where people are rating the pros and cons of snowblowers and the amount of horsepower I need, and I can put the specifications of my yard on, and it'll custom size the snowblower to my needs. All of this communication is being harnessed by brands and also by people. We want to be seen as an authority on something. And if snowblowers is what I want to be an authority on, I can go out there and communicate to the world about snowblowers. And they can talk back to me, and I can give them my opinion, and I find some inherent value in being an expert on that. There's a psychological thing that happens in that communication. By sharing, we feel this this kickback. When I post something and I get retweeted, I feel good about that. And it makes me want to do it again. And I want to say things that are clever and smart so I feel like people like me because of the things they post. And all of this kind of builds on itself. And that makes a company like Toro very happy. Because if I'm into their snowblowers and I'm talking them up, they want me to keep communicating about them, because right now what we know is that in marketing, we're very skeptical of what we see. I give the example of one of the other Minnesota private schools was redoing their website. And they sat down with a group of prospective students and they laid out a ton of pictures on the table. And these were freshmen, like 18-year-olds. They said, pick out the fake photos. Tell me which photos were shot by the marketing department and which ones were shot by students. And the students sat down in the room and they said, every single one of these is fake. In reality, it was 50-50. But because of the presentation of that communication style, because that was coming from because that was being posted, everyone's like, those people would never hang out. That's a marketing photo. These people don't connect together. You just put these people together because it looks good for marketing. So we're skeptical of that by nature. We don't want to pay attention to it. We judge any communication that comes from a company in a way. But when we hear it from our friend, it becomes a much better thing. We're really going to absorb it. Is that guy's like me? That guy right there with the snowblower and the fancy glasses, that's me out there, and that's what I want to be. And so I'm willing to buy whatever his recommendation is, more than I am Toro's website. So, social media, Paul Revere, writing, you think about one-to-many, look at the amount of time that would have taken. You have the secret code, anybody? One if by land, two if by sea. Right? I want to make sure I don't mix that up. Two if by land, whatever. So as that light's held up, he knows, okay, I got to get my social media in action. And I got to get off on horseback, and I got to get going and tell everybody the British are coming, the British are coming, the British are coming. And nobody else can feed back on that. Like, no one's saying, are you sure? Did you, was it really one or two? There's no judge. Paul Revere is the authority, and we're all going to listen to him because he's riding by our house on horseback in the middle of the night. And so this communication is happening there. The same thing happens through social media. I learned about Michael Jackson dying from Twitter. That's where my source came from. There was just a study done on the earthquake that was experienced on the East Coast. People outside of the radius got the tweets before they felt the earth shake. So they knew an earthquake was coming. Can you imagine how fast that turnaround is that's how driven we are to communicate, is we want to be the first people to say, I felt an earthquake. And then our friends all get in and go, oh, he felt an earthquake. Hey, what's that? I felt an earthquake too. I'm going to share it. I'm going to let people know I felt the same earthquake. That social media wiring in here, whether it's on horseback, by letter, Pony Express, we're communicating with each other and with people. Now we take this another way. This is, I'm going to really butcher his name, Whale. Talk about communication. He is an executive from Google. He used Facebook, which I find really funny as a branding guy. This guy is an executive at Google using Facebook in Egypt at the dawning of the Egyptian revolution. And he mobilized an entire country to protest in Tahrir Square. And it was through communication by Facebook that he was able to take a bunch of people with a like-minded opinion in a format that could not be controlled by the government very easily and mobilize. He didn't create the sentiment. He capitalized on that sentiment. He mobilized people based on that communication. Again, one to many. And talk about many. It's like, why would one person want to go down there and protest if they're not sure another person's going to be there? Well, all of a sudden, you start seeing a lot of people talking about it on Facebook, and things are happening. So I think that's another really fascinating way to look at it, is how we're evolving, is that like minds are gathering together around these software tools and being able to form sort of micro communities. In this case, a macro community. I mean, you had a lot of people who were committed to change, and they knew they were all in it for the long haul because they had somebody organizing it from the front, and no matter how hard the government tried to shut off the internet, people were getting through and making it happen. So we talk about how things have changed in our world, and I'm really fascinated by this because it's accelerating so fast, is that this idea of rapid growth. We start with the radio. Took 38 years to reach 50 million people. Before the radio could be experienced by 50 million people, it took 38 years. You think about the cost of, what's the barrier to entering radio? You've got to have a lot of sophisticated equipment. You've got to have the ability to broadcast, you've got to have a lot of electricity, all that sort of stuff has to be in place. Over 38 years, they hit 50 million people. Television took 13 years to reach 50 million people. Again, not everybody can broadcast a TV station. It takes some sophisticated equipment to do it. But 13 years, pretty fast. The internet took us 4 years to reach 50 million people. So that means people are wired, people are connected. The difference in the internet is that when it first was dawning, there was a lot of sophistication to it, but it's been becoming more and more open, more and more accessible. Anyone can go out and create a blog at no cost to them if they want. Build that up. Anyone can start a Google Hangout, and all of a sudden we can all be gathering around, spread out all over the world. But 50 million people in 4 years. The iPod took 3 years to reach 50 million people. And I love this one because this is the first generation iPod. It looks so like, I mean, it's like the cassette deck of iPods. It looks so ancient, doesn't it? You know, that's how long ago is that? That's like 2001. You know, ancient history. And then now we really accelerate. Facebook added 100 million users in less than 9 months. So things are moving faster and faster. And moving off of communication a little bit, Angry Bird Space took 35 days to get 50 million downloads. So that is how fast things just keep moving. And everyone's like, so what's the next thing? Like, I want to get on it. I want to be the next person to talk to all my friends about how I was #1 joining it. Like, I joined Twitter before it had an E. It was so cool when it was back in the Web 2.0 days, is the things people want to say. And this is just how fast our society is just elevating, and how much more open we have, or how much more open we've become, is that we can communicate now through so many different ways, and the barriers, like if I want to start a TV station, you're going to say, good luck, Jason. But if I want to open up a blog, and I don't care what it's about, there might be a community that's interested in it. This idea that has been written about over and over again is this idea of the long tail, is that, I'm forgetting the author's name. Anyone know? There's a book called The Long Tail. And the idea is that the internet has made all of these communities that band together around small things. So even the most minute, stupid sounding idea can have a community of like 20 million people that gather around it because they're spread out all over the world. It's like, no, I'm really into like, you know, shoegazing rock from Britain in the 1980s. And so I've got my little community and I've got my Facebook fan page all around it. And I'm best friends with all those people and I've never met them face to face. Like, if that was me, that's not me. But that's the way the world has been shaped, is that we're forming communities with people and we're forming bonds. Like, this communication is happening regularly. And in such a way that when I first started using Twitter, my wife had this, I would talk about my friends. Like, oh, my friend, you know, Julio will be here later. And I constantly, oh yeah, my friend Julio. She's like, have you ever met Julio? I'm like, well, at the time, no. But he's my friend. Like, we talk all the time. We go back and forth on Twitter, and he says funny things, and I say funny things, and we hang out all the time. But so she developed the term my friends, and then my friends. Like, I have my friends who I get together and maybe go out after work with, and then I have my friends who I'm on the internet all day with. You know, and it's this weird decision that we have, this weird statement about what forms a relationship. When is a relationship real? And I'm really curious about that. Is when do we... and a lot of these relationships have turned. You know, I think there are a number of people who I know today only because we started talking on Twitter. And that sounds so weird, doesn't it? Like, I think, like, it's sort of, in a lot of ways, sounds like maybe what online dating would sound like to my mom, like, or my grandma. It's like, what, you're going to just go and, like, you don't even know each other. It's like, well, no, I know more about these people than you probably knew about my grandfather before he married, because we're leaving these digital trails. We can learn about each other way before, and this will pop up a bit later. I'm fascinated by this idea of bonds that happen through social media, is that I feel this connection with people that, who knows if they're really who they say they are. And I don't know if have you seen MTV's got the show Is it Catfish? That's taken off of the movie. And this movie is all about this guy who developed a relationship with a woman. And he had photoshopped pictures of them hanging out together. He was so into her. And then finally he's like, you know what? I'm going to go see her. And he drove to the town. The town barely existed. The house was barely there. Turns out this young lady that he was in love with was a married woman. She had a kid. And she created this online persona. And she really loved the fact that he loved her. And that this persona, she felt this bond of friendship with him, but it wasn't romantic the way he felt it. And so their communication, something disconnected there. But it still happens, and it happens today, all the time. I mean, that was just 2-3 years ago. And we're just as suspect as we are of marketing that happens out there. I think we can, to a certain degree, be suspect of what each other's putting out there. And so we'll dig into that a little bit as well.
Well, especially comes from Hawaii, right?
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, what was the football player's name?
Oh, yeah. Manateo.
Yeah.
What, did I say it right?
Pacific Jokesters, or whatever they call themselves.
Yeah. Like, unbelievable. And this guy, it changed his life. Like, you could say maybe he performed as well as he did because he thought he was doing it for her. And, maybe there's, incentive now for future football teams to do that. Stage it, and develop this relationship. And it gets really creepy really fast.
I think that actually happens even without technology.
Yeah.
The facade that we present to others. If you're interested in somebody, you can present yourself as you really are.
Oh, yeah.
You have this facade, this persona that you think will be attractive to the other person.
Yeah.
It's easier with technology.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, and I think that's what happens in relationships. You start dating and you've got this perception of who each other is, then you start getting more serious and you're like, wait a minute. Where'd you come from? You didn't look this way when we started dating, or I don't remember you being into that. All this stuff changes and the walls start falling down. Yeah. So how big is this now? This is from the comic XKCD, which is a great webcomic out there. Map of online communities. What they did is this is their second evolution of this idea of taking online communities and then describing them as a map. And so we kind of back out and you can see all of these are communities that are online. They sort of built them together. You've got sort of represented by continents and how they work together. You've got the Isle of Skype, and you've got Twitter, and then the little offshoots. YouTube is there, Facebook, and then a part of Facebook we got Farmville and Happy Farm, and all of these little communities that are forming in here. So we'll zoom in on, well, not all that much, but we'll zoom in on Facebook, and you have the planes of awkwardly public family interactions. I think of my friends who posted things and then their mom is like, how come you never call me? And it's like, whoa, we weren't talking to you. Where'd you come from? All of a sudden there's family drama. We have, Farmville, where we have these games bleeding into Facebook, but then right across the dopamine sea, we have MMO Isle, for our World of Warcraft fans. That's all there, and we're getting something out of that because we're communicating with other people, but we're accomplishing seemingly complex tasks together, and we're communicating all through it. You've got the sea of memes that lead over into past Troll Bay and into Twitter. This idea of what the world would look like if we were to map it out in terms of social media. I think it's just really fascinating. Yeah. And it's so complex. I mean, when we talk about social media, there are so many options. There are so many avenues. There are so many places to be. And when we talk about this in marketing, we say, well, you don't want to open a door on a communication medium if you're not going to commit to it. And so it would mean, and I think this applies to us as well. When I think of the students that are in my classes, how many of them build LinkedIn pages because they've been told that's the thing they should do, but then they never put anything up on it? And then what you have is this sort of door with nothing on it. And so people go looking at it because LinkedIn places very high on Google. So if I go look on Google and I search your name and it comes up with a blank LinkedIn, I'm sort of I'm a little bit skeptical of who you say you are, for some reason. I don't know, because it's sort of, it ranks high on Google, so yeah.
Is there a way, you hear a lot of things about LinkedIn, kind of the dark side of of all the places to not be active, that's the worst one. That's what I kind of get told. Either be on it or don't be on it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like you either go there and go all in on your profile, build up your resume, build those professional connections. And again, LinkedIn is very deliberate. Like, its professional connections are not. Because they have a way, like, if you start adding me on LinkedIn and I don't know who you are, I can click the button that says, I have no idea who you are. And they police that. So if somebody's going through and trying to make lots of friends, they really want it to be a professional network. And so this is the place where you can build that resume platform that, like, you know, you go out, you get an internship, you want your supervisor to say, oh, so-and-so's a great person. Like, I would love to hire them again if I just had the funding in my budget. You know, all that sort of stuff can be said on LinkedIn. And that's the environment where, and it places really high on Google. I mean, I was going to originally, before I got going into this, I was thinking, what a great way to start out this discussion would be telling y'all to go out there with whatever technology device you have and Google your name and see what comes up. It's fascinating to see what's out there. And there's so much. And we leave this trail that we might not even know we're leaving. And it's all information overload. There's so much out there. Like, if you look for my name, there's so much stuff out there. And I did it again last night. Search my name, and there was stuff that came up that I'm like, I do not remember this being there before. Because Google's constantly tweaking its algorithm, what comes up. And as we're talking about these building of relationships and communication, is that when I search you, I'm developing an opinion about who you are based on that. Just like, you know, it used to be, you know, dress like the job you want to have. You know, and like, that's because when you walk around, people go, oh yeah, I could see him as director of marketing. He's wearing a tie. You know, all that sort of stuff. Like, that happens. But now it's like, oh, so what digital trail are you leaving to? You know, what opinions am I going to form based on, like, I search your name and I see your posts on a lot of unsavory discussion boards. And maybe that's not even you, but it pulls up with your name. And that brings up a whole nother world of, like, whoa, like, what do you do then? Yeah. So privacy and identity. I know this will be a fun one to talk about. Peter Cashmore of Mashable was quoted as saying, "Privacy is dead and social media is the smoking gun." We have opened up the world. We have Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, said he's shining a light into the dark areas. We have what's the WikiLeaks guy's name? Why am I forgetting his name? Yeah, Julian Assange says I'm posting stuff that's out there, and nobody has ever said it's inauthentic. Nobody's said it's lies. It's out there, and he's just shining a light in that darkness and making it show up. And this can happen. This happens for governments. This happens for companies. This happens for us. So what we're posting out there, you know, we're helping frame that. We're helping frame people's opinions of who we are. What happens in Vegas? This slogan is so going to die.
Post it on Facebook.
Like, yeah, because what happens in Vegas gets posted to Flickr.
That's right.
You know, and it's out there. Like, you know, naked fire drill. What's funny about this picture is when I found it, this is not like a digital camera picture. This is somebody scanned this and posted it. So we're talking about regular camera. Somebody scanned it and thought it'd be funny to post it up to Flickr. So whoever these guys are, you know, they might have some explaining to do down the road. We think about our awkward junior high years in life, and I think now I have a 2-year-old daughter at home, and I think now, like, I went through my awkward junior high world, and I lived through that, and only the friends that I had in junior high really knew what that was. But now, that might be all over the internet. Like, if I had a blog then, good lord. You know, like screeds and, you know, complaining about things and blah, blah, blah. All of that would be out there, potentially with my name on it. And all of a sudden, that junior high year follows me around a lot longer.
Oh, that's what's true. I'm glad. I thought I was losing my mind for a second. So
The laughing?
well, yeah, just hearing the voices, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Flashback.
Yeah, this is my daughter. And I searched her name on Google, and this came up. And this is a video I posted of her and my mom just looking at the computer and laughing at videos they were seeing. It's like a cat that's falling asleep. And she just wants to watch it over and over again, and this video is there. I have unintentionally left a digital footprint for my daughter. As a 2-year-old, So when she gets, like, this will most likely still be out there when she's 18. All of a sudden, her baby pictures are there. Eating at Izzy's is posted to the web. Those, when you think back to, like, if you've ever taken a significant other home and the baby album comes out and all those embarrassing photos, like, all of a sudden, you don't have to go home for that. It's all online. I can Google your name and see those baby photos. That embarrassing picture at Mount Rushmore. All that stuff can be there. Creepy in a way. Yeah.
Eric yesterday said that he started Facebook for his 8-year-old.
Yeah. I have friends who, when they're deciding on names, they're registering the Google accounts, the Gmail accounts for them. And they're just like, oh, well, I got to secure the identity, so that they have it when they want to use it.
I also saw Facebook and some of the other ones are actually Twitter are names people are giving their children.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Like naming their kid Facebook?
Yeah, naming their kid Facebook or Twitter. Dead serious.
That's poor children.
Well, it depends. I mean, that's that.
That poor kid named MySpace.
That's the poor child.
Sorry, Justin Timberlake's trying to make it a new thing, but you just wonder, like, when those things evolve. Yeah. So this is, before I was married, my name was Jason Moran, and this is Jason Moran. We're not all that similar. He's a jazz pianist. He did a what do you call it, an artist in residence at Walker Art Center. My dad heard him on the neighborhood and called because he thought I was on the radio. I'm like, Dad, I don't play the Jason Moran. I'm like, no, that's not me. But the thing is there are these digital doppelgangers that can exist for us. Is that these people with our names that are out there online, and if they have a bigger footprint than us, how do we stand out? Well, it wasn't, my last name now that I'm married is DeBoer-Moran. I hyphenated it, and now I'm the only Jason DeBoer-Moran. Like, you Google me, and I'm like, yeah, probably that. And my wife may be suspect. She might think, well, did you just want to hyphenate because you wanted the top Google result? No. I didn't. But I think it's really interesting to think about what do you do when somebody else owns your identity online? If you search the top 4 hits on Jason Moran, the majority of them are for the jazz pianist. The second one is an Australian mobster who was killed, and like Jason Moran, killed in front of blah blah. And I'm like, oh wow, I've got this whole how do I rank up in that? How do I beat these sensational stories if I wanted to place in Google? I have a good friend, Thomas Knoll, and he works in the startup scene now in Las Vegas. And his name is very popular, but sort of obscure. Thomas Knoll is one of the chief engineers behind the invention of a little software product called Photoshop. It's the name when you launch Photoshop, you see it like it's one of the first names that scroll by. And so Thomas Knoll is owned on the web by the Thomas Knoll of Photoshop. And so he had to figure out, okay, well, I'm trying to make a career on the internet. Like, I've got companies I want to start. I want people to know me. I want people to find me. I want people to invite me to speak. How do I do that? And so he had to figure out, I'm going to create my own world. I'm going to create thomasknoll.info, and I'm going to start blogging a lot, and I'm going to get attention out there. There's a story that a friend of mine tells about a realtor coming to her, and she's a social media consultant. She sat down with him, and he said, okay, I got a problem. I don't like the internet, and I don't want to use it. I don't want anything about me out there, but there's this guy who posted a news article about me on his blog, and he hates me, and he just ripped me up. He's a troll. He's just ripping me up not because I did bad selling a house, but because I left a flyer on his doorstep. And he was upset about this flyer. He called my office, reamed me out on the phone, and then he posted this blog about what a bad realtor I am because I leave flyers around the neighborhoods. And I'm a bad environmentalist. I don't care about people. I don't care about the neighborhood. All this sort of stuff. And if you search the realtor's name, that's the first thing that comes up. So his challenge for my friend Jen was, remove me from Google. Like, I will pay you to get me off of Google. If you could just do that for me, that'd be great. That's not going to happen. So they had to talk about, okay, like, I appreciate your sort of your offensive moves, like we'll go get Google and we'll take them down. Like, that's going to be it. Or we could talk about the defense. Like, what if you start a blog? What if you start writing some stuff and we'll post it under your name? And what if you start a LinkedIn page? And what if we actually get your website optimized and stuff up there so you show up and we can beat out this cranky blogger man so that your website then takes prominence over it. Because in reality, I mean, you can game Google's algorithm to a certain degree, but the goal of getting up there is that Google wants the most authentic link to show up as the top. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a worthwhile, search engine. Yeah.
What do you think about the idea of creating your own brand instead of your name? So I do that. I use Inver Hill Sophia.
Yeah.
But I own the Google page, right? Because I'm the only one out there that uses it.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think about it? Because it's not your name anymore.
Right. Well, and that's where I've had to wrestle with that a bit because I started out, when I started out using Twitter, it was just going to be this fun, dorky little thing that I did. And now it's become part of my personal brand in a way. And my name is Jason Moran. There's no way I'm getting that on Twitter because it's already taken. But New Coventry is the handle that I've been going by online for years. And so that became the thing, but I always feel like I have some explaining to do. I have to sit down and go, okay, well, yeah, it's not, that's not who I am. This is why I have it. It's something that meant something to me about, Coventry Cathedral in England was sort of the image I was going for. I visited it and I was really taken by the, looking through the back window from this beautiful cathedral into the bombed out shell and sort of how life and rebirth happens was really fascinating to me. And the fact that they chose to keep the shell of the old cathedral there while still looking into the beautiful thing that's there now. This was all and that's try sitting down in an interview and saying, okay, let me tell you about why I'm New Coventry. Yeah, okay, you're getting a little too philosophical for me, Jason. Just tell me how you come up with my company. That I do think that some of us have to do that. If you're John Smith, you're not going to own that Google result. Maybe you can. Yeah.
How are they changing that? Say for artists, if you have a DJ name and there's 5,000 of you, how are they changing that so it's not a lawsuit issue? Where's the gray area there? So is this a lawsuit? Is this just you have to change your name?
Yeah.
Who gets the jurisdiction over that?
Well, and I think a lot of that does come down to who gets the trademark. To a certain degree. There's intellectual property law is just huge on that. Another side story is I have a friend who started a group of friends who are in folk bands, and they decided they would tour together and they would be Monsters of Folk. That's what they call the tour because it's really ironic, Monsters of Folk tour. Come on, Monsters of Rock. Monsters of Folk. So they started traveling around the Midwest, playing in all these clubs, coffee shops, because who would play in a club as a folk band? But they're going to coffee shops, and then the band, it was a one-time thing. They disbanded. Occasionally they post things. They were approached by a folk band they were forming a super group of, I forget the guys' names, I'm going to forget them all, but they were big names in modern folk music. And they were that's our name, and we're willing to take you to court over that. And so he was able to demonstrate. He said, well, good luck with that, because here, if you go back in our blog, you can see we've been posting since, 2000 under this, and your band just started in 2004. So then they eventually reached sort of an agreement where it was okay, well, then I'll just buy your website. It worked out great for them because they were done with it. But yeah, if you've got dueling names, if you're both John Smith and you're using that as your professional identity, DJ John Smith, I don't know, and you've got other DJ John Smiths, what are you going to do? To a certain degree, I think people get into some battles over it. You'll see, if you know the Monster cable company that sells really expensive cables at Best Buy, they're ruthless in brand enforcement. So much so that they're taking car repair shops that are called Monster Auto to court because they're no, we own that because we make cables that fit in cars, and if you're named Monster Auto, people are going to think that you're stealing our own brand. Yeah.
And did I just read something about, not to derail, but people buying up trademarks purposely to sue people?
Yeah.
Don't even own them, they just buy up a trademark, and then they Google everybody that has that trademark, and they just send out lawsuits and get as much money as they can.
Yeah, patent trolling is a big deal.
Patent trolling.
Yeah, people are, and Apple's had to deal with this over and over again. It's somebody says, oh, no, back in 1982, I created a document that explained how a touchscreen would work. And I never made one, but I came up with the idea, so you need to pay me, $50 for every iPhone that's been sold since the beginning of time. And they go to court over it. Apple just lost a huge battle in Brazil because another company owned the trademark in Brazil on iPhone. And Apple started trying to sell their own iPhone, took them to court and lost. because they could demonstrate, well, they've been using it longer because they had a device they called the iPhone. It was nowhere near what the Apple iPhone was. But those sort of battles happen. I mean, I work at Concordia University, and we're really sensitive to this in Minnesota because we have Concordia College up in Moorhead. And so we have a lot of brand confusion that happens. I mean, people call our office and say, hey, so you guys do the language camps? Nope, that's the one up north. Sometimes we even get bills. People like invoices will come in. They'll be like, yeah, you guys did this, this, and this, and we shipped that to your place. No, that wasn't us. So like there's this blurring, and that identity becomes so important, and you really have to exert owning it. I think that's the other thing that comes up in these legal battles is, do you really own it? Now you're not going to win. You're not going to win a fight if somebody goes out and says something bad about you online, unless you've got some significant, legal backing to say, oh yeah, that was. I'm forgetting the legal term for what it could be. What's that? Like slander. Yeah, slander or something along those lines. I mean, we've seen that in review sites. People go on to Yelp, and there was a chiropractor who was suing a bunch of his patients because they went on to Yelp and ripped him up. And he was like, you're saying bad things about me and they're not true. And so he sued him. And, the battle ensues. And then the other side of it, there was a pizza place in New York that had so many bad reviews on Yelp, they printed them up and had their employees wear them as shirts because they owned it. They were like, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, we're a crappy pizza joint. Like, here's our cool shirts about it, And so they sort of, took that route to go around it. It's like, well, we'll own it. So success theater is this idea that we present the self we want to be. We go out there and we create this persona of success. And I see it all the time on Facebook. I mean, my kids are the best. My life is wonderful. Everything's great. I got a raise. All this sort of stuff. And we're pushing that out there because we want the world to think we're successful. And so because if we're successful, then people will actually believe it. We're creating this brand around ourselves in a lot of ways. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But it's all out there. You see it especially with couples. I mean, people are, oh, my husband's so sweet. He did this. Or, I came home from work and all the dishes were done. And all that sort of stuff. Like, come on. Like, yeah, life goes on. Come on. Like, really. All that stuff gets posted. It's because we want to present who we want people to perceive us as. And then people want to build themselves up. This is from The Oatmeal, which is another great webcomic. And this is something, when you talk to brands, they're like, yeah, we want people to love us on Facebook, so could you go out there and like our page a whole bunch of times and tell everybody how great we are? I think sometimes that's what LinkedIn can feel like, is you join it and all of a sudden, like, 75 people are like, hey, can you tell the world how great I am? Because I really am great, right? So I'm trying to be a better person, become more likable. Would you mind going around and tell everyone how great I am? In the real world, that would never fly. Like, you wouldn't go up to your friend like, well, maybe in dating, you'd be like, hey, can you tell us how great I am? But like, you wouldn't go up to like, oh, can you like just drop in with the professor and say, yeah, I'm a really great student because I really want to do that. But we choose to present that in classes and in face-to-face interactions. I think about, we were talking just before we got started about privacy and how privacy is really to protect the guilty, right? Is that this idea of, no, everything should be private because I want to protect my ability to go about and be whoever I am. And I love the idea of Don Draper, if you've watched Mad Men, is that you've got this ad executive who's completely rebuilt himself from the ground up, and he's living a total lie, and he's got this whole dark side, this whole past that he doesn't want anyone to know about. And that works in the 50s and the 60s. That would be very difficult to pull off today. Politicians get away with it for a while. You hear about it, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, they did what? And it's like, well, yeah, they were stupid about it. They posted it online, or somebody else posted it online. But in reality, weren't they just stupid for doing it? Like, is that where the stupidity comes in, or is it do they blame the tool or do they blame themselves? And it's so easy for us to sit down and say, oh, Twitter, why'd you have to share that photo? Well, like, why did that accidentally happen? Yeah.
And I try to make the argument that it's neither Twitter's fault nor the person posting the photo's fault. Yeah. It's society's fault that they think a picture of Anthony Weiner's a bad thing. So I think it's a social phenomenon. It's society's fault, not the Twitter. And does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I talked to a class at Concordia just the other day. They were talking about how do they present themselves online, and what do you so you posted a bunch of pictures of yourself drunk at a party online. You know, do you want to delete those all off? Like, what if you're on a job hunt and one of those shows up? And their comment was like, well, shouldn't the people at the job understand that maybe I like to drink every now and then? Like, in a lot of ways, you could say, well, yeah. But I think what naturally happens with maybe a recruiter is like, well, if they're comfortable having that online, what are they doing that they're not comfortable having online?
But that's a weird thought move right there, because that's that assumption that I just find that moment right there to be really weird, because I think it permeates everybody. Everybody has that kind of sense that, well, if they're willing to post that, then they must. And I just find that the continual, there's something darker behind it. And the more honest you are, the worse you are. That I just find it to be a fascinating argument.
Yeah, I think it is. What was that?
I said it's a great argument.
Yeah.
Because as you know, we're having this dialogue, I'm thinking of discussions that have been in recent times about employers demanding Facebook identities and passwords so they can go see what you're doing.
Yeah.
And frankly, I find it outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We have this huge blurring. Like, you know, my grandfather worked for General Motors, and like he went to work and then he came home, and there was a wall between those two lives. His boss didn't care what he did at home, you know, and then he went to work in the morning, and it wasn't a big deal. But now we have this big intermingling, and this in a lot of ways, technology is evolving. It is that, you know, it's 1 a.m. and my phone's buzzing with a work email. Well, am I at work or am I at home? Well, I'm salaried, so I'm both, right? You know, so like this whole world evolves, and like if all of a sudden pictures of me at a club show up, it's like, well, wait a minute. You know, was Jason at work or was he at home when that happened? You know, that there's this blurring of things, and it makes me really uncomfortable. But it's so difficult to build that wall. Like on my Twitter page, I own that I am employed by Concordia University because that's part of my brand, that's part of my identity. I want people to know that about me because it says something about me in a way. But at the same time, Concordia might have some concerns about that if I'm going out and doing things that they disagree with.
Well, I put the disclosure on like my Facebook page.
Yeah.
And I said these are the opinions of Shane Straup. They have absolutely nothing to do with Inver Hills. So
Yeah,
that doesn't mean they actually doesn't get, you know. But.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't hold up. That's the other question.
Well, it should hold up, right? I mean, because as long as it's there prior to, like, it seems what I'm hearing is as long as it's first and it's there and you can show it's been there for X amount of time.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah. It's interesting, and a lot of companies now are developing that. It's like, no, you can't say that you're affiliated with us. Like, if you work for this retail shop, you know, Domino's Pizza had that whole scandal where the kids were messing up, you know, shot a YouTube video of them like doing disgusting things with pizza while they're in their Domino's uniforms. And their argument was like, well, we weren't being paid then. It was after work. And Domino's said, you were wearing our uniforms. Like, you were in our restaurant. And you posted these to YouTube. And people were then like really disturbed by the idea of Domino's Pizza after that.
well, they should. Because that's that truthiness, right? That's all they're doing is what probably 90% of the people are doing at Domino's, right? At least they're just being honest about it.
Right. Yeah, and that could be. That's it. You know, that's what people think. That's what people had thought.
And that's why privacy protects the guilty and not the innocent.
There you go. Yeah. So then we narcissism. That's what it all comes down to. Is we want to focus on ourselves and talk about ourselves so much. I think is that we're just looking right in the water and telling Twitter exactly how beautiful we are. And telling Facebook what wonderful lives we lead.
Awesome.
And it's partially to convince ourselves of that, and it's also to convince, and we feel like it's part of convincing the rest of the world. So what? So you could say, Jason, people just won't care. But surveys show that 70% of job candidates were rejected by recruiters just from a pure search engine perspective of seeing what comes up. This is a quote from Greg Swan at Weber Shandwick. He was interviewed by WCCO where he said that. So you think about that little bit of edge between you, like if you're sitting in a stack of resumes with 150 resumes and they're just going through and Googling the name, what is that? So the example I give is the interview, and this was an experience that happened with a friend of mine. They had scheduled up an interview at a company. They were going to that interview. And this is the Twitter feed between the employees that were there. They scheduled the interview. They went out of their way to get there. They get to the place for the interview, and they get a call right when they pull in. Drove there in rush hour. They get a call. Oh, the boss is so busy today. He got slammed by clients. He's not going to be able to be there for the meeting. So if you could just, we'll reschedule it another time. So it's a social media job. The guy's like, well, what the heck? I'll just see. I wonder what clients he's working with. I'll pull him up. Pulls it up. M, the boss, how do you feel about golfing tomorrow afternoon? Like, this is all blatantly posted online between him and a coworker. I feel really good. 1:30, that's the time of the interview. Like, oh yeah, slammed by clients. I'm telling you, I was slammed by clients. I couldn't make it. But your digital trail is saying another thing. And what's hilarious, I love this exchange because you've got so many different forms of social media at play here. You've got Twitter, the two of them working out the golf date, and then you've got, look who stopped by my office 15 minutes before the interview is supposed to happen, is a picture of the guy in his golf gear getting ready to leave, and then you've got to check in on Foursquare at the golf club. It's like, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what the heck? You know, you said you were going to meet me, and now you didn't. So you might say, well, whatever, Jason, maybe in marketing careers, but the job that I want, people just won't care. Like, I want a job in a factory. No one cares what I do. Maybe after you're done here, you're going to go on and go on to a master's program or go on to a bachelor's program, and you want to do that. Well, so survey of admission professionals. 386 admission officers were interviewed. 80% of them have received a friend request from a student on Facebook. I think that's fascinating from a college admissions level. That like people are that into like, oh yeah, I want to be a friend. 82% of admission professionals say that Facebook is part of the recruitment process. So you think at that selective university, what you have posted on your Facebook may in fact have some bearing on your ability to get in or not. I know we're running a little low on time, I think. Where are we at?
We're doing okay.
10 minutes? Okay. So some quick case studies. These are things that, communication that happens in the workplace, obviously conducted by people. So some fail moments. Because I'm from Detroit, I'm fascinated by the auto industry. We have Chrysler. This happened. The RT's a retweet. What happened is Chrysler Autos tweeted this. I find it ironic that Detroit is known as the Motor City, and yet no one here knows how to redacted drive. And this is from the official Chrysler Twitter. They deleted it, but it wasn't fast enough for retweeted by 100 plus other people by then. So Chrysler's got to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Damage control mode. First thing they do, our apologies, account was hacked. Wasn't our fault. The account was hacked. We're taking steps to resolve it.
Can we start calling that the Wiener approach?
Oh, I think it really is. It's like, somebody did. And then, like quietly, later on in the day, we hired a company, social media agency did it. What happens is I say on my phone, I've got New Coventry on Twitter, and I've got Concordia St. Paul on Twitter. So I could accidentally tweet as Concordia St. Paul if I'm not thinking before I'm doing what I'm doing. And so you've got person driving from the social media company hitting potholes all over Detroit, because if you've driven to Detroit, and I have, I'm from there, it's really bad. The roads are horrible. And it's all, there's theories. It's all about the auto industry trying to sell more cars. But the roads are really bad. They're really bumpy. Someone from out of the state comes in, working for the marketing firm. It's like, I hate these roads. I'm going to tweet about it. And then they accidentally use the Chrysler account instead of their own. Like, wow, what a big mistake. Then there's the opposite approach. We've got the Red Cross. This was tweeted by the Red Cross Twitter account February 15th, 2011. So two more 4 bottle packs of Dogfish Heads minus touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. Getting slizzard.
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 What is slizzard?
Yeah. So then you've got their social media manager who posts shortly afterwards. That rogue tweet was due to my own inability to use Hootsuite. I wasn't actually getting slizzard, but just excited. How embarrassing. Or now embarrassing. So then, Red Cross tweets, and I love this because it's so authentic. It's so like, hey, we're a warm fuzzy nonprofit. We've deleted it, but I assure that we're sober and we've confiscated the keys. The tweet that I didn't capture was after this, is that Dogfish is a microbrew. And what they ended up doing is the next day, they were so excited because the Red Cross is got a lot of Twitter followers. So they're like, our brand is in front of all these Twitter followers and it's all over the news because the Red Cross did something silly. So they decided for every time somebody tweeted getting slizzard the next day, they would donate $1 to the Red Cross. So they partnered their brands together, and they were able to do something really kind of fascinating with it.
Do you know how much money they ended up
I
paying?
have no idea. I need to look up the study on it, but I just love that story. And then we have, okay, so that's social media. So we have Kenneth Cole. We'll go back to Egypt. Kenneth Cole, the thing that happens on Twitter is you get trends that show up, and everybody wants to capitalize on the trend, because if you're on the trend, you get to show up on the top spot. Kenneth Cole, in a matter of being a little bit silly and not thinking, tweets this. As everyone's tweeting using the hashtag Cairo about the massacre that's happening there, about people dying, people being killed, they tweet, "Millions are in uproar. Rumor is they heard our new spring collection is available online." Like, this is marketing being stupid. And so you think, okay, the damage happened, Kenneth Cole, and it's even signed -KC. So you're like, Kenneth Cole, the actual Kenneth Cole tweeted this? What is wrong with that man? And you're like, okay, the damage was done on Twitter. But some graffiti artists got a hold of it and went down to the flagship store in New York and painted it on their store window that night, because people were so upset with Kenneth Cole for making light of such a massive, devastating situation. Hilarious, like in terms of how a fail can turn into such a big thing because the way we communicate is inappropriate or wrong.
But did that actually hurt their sales or drive their sales up? Because I get this gut feeling, right?
Yeah, because a
now,
lot of people say, that, well, there's no bad publicity. It's all publicity, right?
especially when you're selling something, because now it becomes hip to have it because of this.
Yeah.
Like I can see him selling shirts, but it'll say this on the back.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Well, and now we're talking about it. Like Kenneth Cole's getting a little brand play from this little talk. Yeah. So silver linings, some people are doing it right. This just happened yesterday. If you heard Burger King's Twitter account was hacked, the hackers took over it, changed it to the McDonald's logo, posted a statement about how they were bought out with McDonald's because they were making the beef with dog meat or horse meat or something. This big, crazy scandal. The same thing happened to Jeep.
Yep.
Jeep got hacked. They were sold out to another company, all this sort of stuff. That's what their Twitter account took them a while to get everything back online. Burger King interacts and says, posts to Jeep and says, glad everything's back to normal. And I love Jeep's response. Because these are companies. They're not supposed to feel like people. But Jeep says, hey, thanks, BK. Let us know if you want to grab a burger and we'll swap stories. We'll try. That's a great way to turn a really horrible situation around. Yeah.
That's because the marketers are witty there, right?
Oh, yeah.
They're just on it.
Yeah, it makes you feel like, oh, yeah. I could, yeah.
I was going to say, too, I saw people take snapshots of those Twitter things just like that. There was one between Taco Bell and I think it was Chipotle, and their marketers specifically did that so somebody would screen cap it and then share it, and now everybody in the world seen it. So even though they weren't trying to be witty and funny, what they did ended up, and nobody knows that it was set up.
Right. It's like this whole idea of trying to set up viral, and a lot of times those are the biggest fails because you can't architect that. Reddit has a great, I know there was a session earlier today on Reddit, there's a great subreddit called Hail Corporate. If you go there, and it's a group of people who are like tinfoil hat people that are just really obsessed that any mention of a brand anywhere on Reddit is done by a corporate marketer. And so they're skeptical about everything. And it's fascinating to read just how skeptical and where marketing creeps in, because these guys are really good at finding it and posting it. So it could be just something like, oh, look, there's somebody posted a Dove candy wrapper on there because they thought it said something cute, but really it's probably Dove marketing, isn't it? So it's all staged. This is Walk Recently. They started on YouTube just as a band doing a bunch of covers. They had their own original music. They covered Gautier's Somebody That I Used to Know. All 5 of them playing one guitar and singing. It's a great video. Within 24 hours, they had 1.5 million views. And it's not like they had a marketing powerhouse behind them. It's just them. It's just those 5 people. And out of this video, they got a record deal with Columbia. And so I'm like, wow. Here they are just trying to put together something funny, and it actually turns into something for them.
Wasn't that what Timberlake's hoping to do with
MySpace? Yeah. And because they want to figure out how you can capitalize on it. I mean, how many small bands want to get found in this way? But it takes some work. I mean, these videos are not unpolished by any means. They look authentic, but they've definitely put some time into figuring out. I can't imagine how many takes this took, because they're all sitting around playing one guitar, And then another side, if you heard about the Super Bowl, this big football game that happened, there was a power outage, and everyone says the biggest ad that happened during the Super Bowl was not on the television. It was when the power outage happened, the people at Oreo tweeted, "Power out, no problem," and then a link to this photo, is that you could still dunk in the dark. And they pulled that together like on a moment's notice. They were able to get that out the door. And so by being able to kind of play around with those situations, be witty, be feeling sort of authentic and real, I just love it. Yeah. So I think the takeaway on this, whether we look at this for brands or whether we look at this for people, is that you don't have to be perfect online because we become skeptical of things that look too good. That's what's wired into us. Like, you know, those infomercials about the magnetic bracelets that make you not being able to fall over. Like, yeah, that sounds great. I want one of those. I don't want to be able to knock over. I love it in this weather right now. I need like 3 of them. Because my walkway is slippery because I never shovel. But the deal is that people want to know that like there's some reality behind this stuff. Is that we don't have to be perfect. People say we need to be authentic. And authentic has become such a stinking buzzword. This idea of authenticity is something marketers like to talk about. I'm a marketer, so I'm talking about it. Is that we want to be authentic, but what it really means is that in practice we need to be mindful about how we use social media. Is that we need to approach it and know like what think about what we're doing. What digital footprint am I leaving for my daughter when I'm posting that video over to YouTube? Yeah.
Well, is that like the antithesis to authenticity, though? Because
Yeah.
authentic's just being who you are.
Yeah.
Not worrying about who you are.
Right. Yeah, and I guess for me, it wasn't a big deal until I had a kid that I really started thinking about it. It's like, what trail am I leaving for her that she might have to live down someday? In a way. Like, because at this point...
son will suffer the sins of the father.
Yeah, it really is that way, isn't it? That I think about that. And I think it's just becoming more and more that this digital world is becoming so prominent in our lives. If you've seen the Google Glass promos that are out there, there's a video of the Google Glass, which is the glasses that have the little Google sensor on it. And basically you could walk up to people, facial recognition, it'll identify them and give you their history. What are they posting on Twitter? What's going on about them? What they are. Now all of a sudden everyone who's walking down the street can see what a boring day I had yesterday. or can see the stupid thing I did last night, or see the photo that my friend posted of the stupid thing I did last night. And if those things take off, like, wow. Like all of a sudden it's no longer about how we dress, it's also how we portray ourselves. And that success theater becomes even more a thing. And we become more guarded in our communication in the way we communicate online. And I think to a certain degree that's to our detriment. There's stories that happen of kids going away to college and mothers are texting with them. And everything sounds perfect and they're using emoticons and everything's so smiley and happy. And then the mother finds out later that their daughter just almost attempted suicide the other night. Because their only communication is through this medium that doesn't really allow for people to be real. Is that they can stage, oh, my life is wonderful and perfect, I'm just going to text my mom that. But in reality, I'm hurting inside and I have no way of letting people know that. Like, that's the communication angle where I get scared of this. Is that we're guarding ourselves and we're so wired to make ourselves seem so wonderful and perfect that when we aren't, it falls apart. Yeah.
And I think that strikes at the heart of what I've been trying to push is that the privacy, that the problem's not what we're doing, it's what people, it's that other people thinking about what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's
and
the
that's,
judgment.
Huh?
It's the judgment.
It's a judgment.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess what I want to say in my more radical sense is screw their judgments, right? I mean, that's the...
Yeah.
So.
Because like everybody gets depressed. But no one wants to say, oh, I'm feeling a little depressed today on Twitter. Like, maybe you do if you're looking for some attention. I mean, that's the perception people have. Oh, they just need their ego massaged. Like...
Yeah, that's the even worse problem, right? Is if you're authentic, you're ignored, and that's that you almost
Yeah. So I imagine it's stuff I struggle with too as I think more and more about it. It's like, is this good? Is this bad? I don't think that how has this changed our society and the way we communicate? I love the fact that it's so easy for us to have conversation now. Like, especially if you're passionate about things, you can find people who are in that. And you can share that and grow in knowledge and experience and all that sort of stuff can happen as a result of social media and the communication that happens through it. But at the same time, it also maybe changes the way we communicate and maybe makes us want to be more guarded in the way we communicate. Yeah.
I think you might have said this already, but I'm just thinking about this question of authenticity.
Yeah.
And it seems like social media could make us less authentic, both in the virtual and the quote-unquote real world.
Yeah.
Because in the virtual world, we talked about how you can create a false persona and so forth, and keep this going. But in the real world, if you're afraid of what you might say, how might that affect your life when it gets out, as it were?
Yeah.
You might be more guarded about everything that you do.
Yeah.
So you'd be less authentic in your everyday life too, because of the fact that you have this fear.
Yeah.
So where does that leave us when it comes to our relationships with other people?
Right. Where does it?
And I say you be honest and you
Own it.
you own it,
Yeah.
and you don't pull a wiener. You say, no, I did that. Yeah. So
Yeah. I mean, I think
I'm gonna start
that's-
calling that a wiener too.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's,
Branded.
yeah.
If wiener was smart, he already branded it.
But nobody wants to own it.
Right.
We don't want really to be authentic in a sense because you're
Right.
punished for it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. And that's where I think I've been harping on this now for 2 days, is that has to change.
Mhm.
And it's not going to change if we continue to hide from it.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, we just have to be honest, right? And
Yeah. Well,
and
it's-
own it, as you say, just own it.
Yeah. Well, and our culture is so wired to make us, like, when you look at bullying and things like that, like, our culture is wired to make us want to hide these things. That, like, oh, well, what will people think if they know that, this is who I am? Or this is.
I think our desire to hire is also linked to hypocrisy, because it's if your employers have never gotten drunk before. I've never done these things, but I can't know that you have.
Right.
So there's this moral hypocrisy
Yeah.
behind this as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it could just be we're seeing the beginnings of a Kuhnian, paradigm shift in the sense of what counts as, public-private. And when those things finally collapse,
Mhm.
I would argue is the best of the best.
Yeah.
And then it'll go back to your father. It'll be about showing up and doing your job.
Right.
And as long as you do that well,
Yeah.
who cares what you're doing on the side?
Yeah. And I really do think that's shifting. I mean, some people are like, so what if I did some illegal stuff back in the day and it got posted all over the internet? Like, well, yeah, but I think sometimes you still have I think it's more so you have to be aware that you might have to explain that. That, like, somebody might say, so tell me about this picture I saw of you online. And be ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. This whole public-private thing we've been talking about for a while now. I don't see the utopian sort of end of everyone being happy with everything.
Well, I didn't say it was going to be
or being
happy.
Even a good thing, because I could see that openness would be good if we all had very, very similar sort of values, things that we cared about, things that we wanted to maintain, and so forth. But we're probably going to be in conflict in those things, as far as I can see or predict. And, to the extent that we struggle for different sorts of things that we see important and hold different things as important, it might be a good thing to be private.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to take control of or have a position of power, they can manipulate and exploit the information that they know about someone else or some other group. And if it's all open, it's easier for them to do that. But if you can keep them from being able to get that information, that might be...
See, I think that's the myth
to
that that's
be
even
private in that
possible,
respect.
that we can keep them from it. Because once the system is big, the powers that be are going to get... It's like I was saying earlier, if you have a bank account, the hackers can get your information. The Social Security, the government has your Social Security. I mean, they already have all the information. It seems like I just keep falling back on the more that it's out there, the more I can actually verify what's being said about this person instead of somebody telling me what they were saying about the person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't think everyone who wants to keep things private is hiding something bad. I mean, I think that that's the assumption that you're making. But I think sometimes I want to hide things that are important to me too, that are maybe good, not necessarily guilty pleasures or something of that.
Well, like,
sort.
give me an example.
Well, I mean, even with the bank information, I mean, I do want to hide those things.
But those things, a hacker can get that information.
Yeah,
A good
but that
hacker.
doesn't mean
Well,
everybody
Target-
can get it.
Target has that. I mean, that story was
Right.
last year about the dad received the coupons for baby products. It's like, what are you doing sending me this? No one in my house is pregnant. I got a 16-year-old girl, and my husband, or my wife is beyond having kids right now. And so Target apologized. The next day, the man called. He said, well, so you knew a little bit more about my family than I did. my daughter's pregnant.
Right.
And they based that data off of her purchasing habits. Is that they were able to track what she was buying, and they had developed the profile that said, if people are buying these items, this may be going on in their life, and so we'll send them these coupons because they'll be more likely to shop with us. And so Target actually had to scale back because the creeping me out factor was swinging too far.
But that proves my point. They were right.
Yeah, they were right.
It was right information, and
But that doesn't mean that they should have access to that information. I mean, safeguards could be made, and in fact, they're attempted to be made all the time. I mean, the government hires hackers to protect against the hackers. I mean, there's a battle going on there.
we're probably the same ones that are hacking it anyway.
But it doesn't mean that
Right.
It doesn't mean that safeguarding is going to lose. I mean,
Well,
it's not an inevitability.
I'm just not. I guess I just. And I mean, all this goes back to my Nietzschean underpinnings, but the sense that it seems like anytime we're being told those values of right and wrong, those are never coming from me. They're always coming from out there. And I have this kind of authentic sense says, I see no problem with this, but I'm supposed to feel a problem with it because these people, I mean, that's that kind of weird.
But we live in a civil society, so we have to have some sort of laws that govern these kinds of things.
Well, see, as an intellectual anarchist, I guess I don't accept that premise either. So,
Well,
because you can
bad.
Too bad everybody's doing it.
Yeah, we're living in a society.
But that society's shifting, and so all I'm saying is you're just on the losing side of the game, right? You're on the wrong side of history.
I don't think laws are going away.
I think I should have chosen.
I want the philosophy department meetings take. That's what I want to know.
We're still in one, actually.
Now we're
Started a
getting
few
to the good
years ago.
stuff. Now we're breaking down the warm-up time. Now let's go.
No, I think this is the heart of. I think this whole social media thing is. I think this is why, because if it was easy, that wouldn't be a problem. I think it's because it's so complex, what makes it so fascinating.
I was going to say, do you think the problem with some people viewing Facebook things, do you think that will go away as generations progress? Because if you think about it, the generation that the person looking at job applicants is right now is totally alien to Facebook. So they think everything on Facebook, just like you guys were just discussing, is this, full truths. This is what I'm like. This is the only picture I have of the resume in front of me. Do you think, when my generation, I'm only 18, but when my generation gets to that point, do you think that will turn and it will just be like Facebook is just, just what it was meant to be? It was just meant to be this little sphere up there that anybody can say or post what they want. There's not that, not real life applications. Because now I'm scared. It's like, I've had a Facebook since I was like, 14 years old, and 14-year-old me didn't watch what he said. I'm sitting here thinking, like, not only is my family going to see this, now my, it doesn't matter how good of a person I am now, my future job boss will be like, oh, you're talking about saying bad jokes out there when you're 12. So.
Yeah, I do think it's evolving. I mean, I think that people are evolving in this understanding. I think that even now, I mean, it is, as this personal and work life blur continues, I think people are just going to have to accept, like, well, like you're going to go out and, I was a junior hire too. Like, that's sort of like, oh except for it's does that person have the, the power to sort of put together like, and I didn't have Facebook to record it all, I didn't put it all out there. Like, I've got journals, that are tucked away that have that whole dark side of me that I don't want anyone to see. That whole thing. I think that's evolved. I think at first it was sort of like, whoa. Yeah. It was a bigger deal. And I think people now are starting to see, especially as more people with that history online are going into the workforce. It's sort of like, well, I would expect that. Like, it might be, it might, if it does come up, I think it would be, more so like, I think the concern would happen based on, well, so if you're going to tie yourself to our company through your social profiles, we want to make sure that you are portraying our company in a certain way. Just like, we don't want you polluting our pizza in a Domino's uniform. We don't want you, telling dirty jokes while your Twitter handle says you work for my company,
So, are any of you fans of the old show Freaks and Geeks?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they showed, they replayed an episode the other day on TV that it's the episode where the daughter's name's escaping me, but anyway, so she has a little diary, like a lot of people maybe used to keep that they would write in, and her parents sneak in. They first, of course, have this sort of dilemma about whether they ought to read it or not. Then they go and they do read it, and they learn things about their daughter and her perception of them and all this sort of stuff. And so there are these positives that come out of it, but there's also this violation of the daughter's trust and everything. Yeah. And so I'm thinking about maybe these digital trails you leave in analogy to the keeping of a journal.
Right.
And I'm wondering if nowadays when people leave a digital trail, I mean, I suspect that the more and more they get used to the technology, the less and less they have the expectation that it's curses on you who read this. It's sort of like, hey, look, here's my diary, you want to read it? They sort of are almost implicitly consenting to the reading of their thoughts and so forth. In fact, broadcasting them in a certain way. But earlier, in an earlier session, Jerry gave a talk, and he asked students, primarily younger people who were in here, and asked them, how many of you have a Facebook account? A lot of them, How many of you have ever read the privacy constraints on it, or information about what you're agreeing to, essentially?
Yeah.
No one raised their hands. And I don't know if that's because they assume that stuff is private, or that they just don't care. So I think it's interesting. Suppose that they just don't care, right? And I think that then there's this sort of sociological shift to a lack of interest or concern about privacy, right?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking of the split between privacy and public and private in two different ways. One, in the sociological sense, do we care less about it than we used to? Is it less important? But then also in a sort of moral sense, as should it be important? And I think that it could still be important in the moral sense, even if sociologically it's not important. But I think that's a slightly different conversation.
I
require
do.
different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you think about all those agreements. I mean, and occasionally something leaks out, like Instagram changed their privacy policy not that long ago, saying, "Oh yeah, whatever you posted on our site, we can use to market however we want." And sell those pictures to, I've got a picture of my daughter eating Chobani yogurt and making a huge mess, but the Chobani logo is really prominent, and all of a sudden it's like, well, if Instagram wants to monetize that image, they could just take it and sell it to Chobani and say, use this in your ad campaign. And all of a sudden pictures of my daughter are out there advertising for the product. Well, why? Because I gave them that permission by posting that image. Like, that's the right I gave up to them in a way, And instead of me getting the payout on it, it's Instagram's getting the payout on it. So.
And what's kind of worse in this situation? That or the SOPA initiative where they could sue you for that, right?
Yeah.
They could shut you down and everything.
Yeah.
Thank God that didn't happen. But I mean, it's still back there. It's not gone away, right? So if SOPA went through or something like that, theoretically, they could shut you down without any any court recourse, right? Simply because you use their logo, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess if I have to choose between those two worlds, I'd much rather have the one where they make money off of me than shutting me down.
Right.
I guess if I have to.
Well, and you look on television, all the it's so funny to me, like the shows where people are obviously using an Apple computer, but it's like NCIS, and they've got like the silver sticker over the Apple logo because they don't want to pay Apple for using their logo on the show. It's like, well, but that's product placement, right? Like, shouldn't you just be happy you're getting it for free? But no, Apple's going to want to kick back for using it. It's so fascinating how all this works. And it's like, well, should Chobani be paying me because I took a picture of my daughter enjoying Chobani yogurt? Or should they tell me to take it down because somehow I'm defaming them,
And it seems like I see the world heading that, the previous sense, that what we're going to start seeing is, they'll take that and use it for the ad, and they'll get like a 10% or 5% kickdown or something. And we'll just they'll do away. It'll be a job killer for advertisers, because we'll just do away with advertisers, and we'll just go out there and get it, and we'll just pay you instead, right?
But then you get into that situation where so how do I trust my friend's recommendations anymore? I had a friend who was early in using Twitter. He was raving about restaurants. I thought, oh, this guy's an authority on restaurants around here. And so a new restaurant's opening up. He's like, this place is great. Everyone should go check it out. Really great review. I'm like, awesome. I go there. Later on, I find out he's the marketing guy for that restaurant. Like, I didn't put it together. Like, his marketing firm is running their Twitter account. at the same time as his personal account is raving about that restaurant. Sort of like, the money's, just going like that. And I didn't put that together, and I felt really sort of betrayed by that person in a way where it was like, I was tricked into eating there. Well, I like the food. But I was tricked into eating there. I thought I was doing it because he was just a nice guy who happened to like the restaurant, but I don't know, maybe he didn't like it.
But if you like the
Maybe just
food,
didn't
should
eat
that matter? I mean, there's
What's that? Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's the sort of thing that I think is, we talk about sort of endorsements, and then there was this whole anti-endorsement thing that happened with Abercrombie and Fitch. They wanted to pay the situation from Jersey Shore not to wear their clothing because they did not want their brand associated with the show Jersey Shore.
Can you blame them?
I know, I can't blame them, but I think, isn't that a riot? Like, okay, wear affliction, but don't wear our clothes. Like whatever. We're willing to pay you to do that. Like,
pay you not to wear it.
yeah, I know. Like, I want that. I want that kind of setup. Like, it's the same thing that goes into like people who were when there were cars that like if you got them wrapped with a brand logo or something. People auctioning off tattoo space.
On your head.
Yeah, on your head.
San Francisco, they had this little Mexican restaurant had a deal where if you came in, if you got a tattoo of their restaurant logo on your body, they would give you free lunch for a lifetime. And so they thought, who's going to really do this?
Oh.
There won't be many people.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they were giving out hundreds
Right.
of free lunches.
Wow.
And they're like, oh, we need to rethink our marketing plan here.
Yeah. Yeah, I when I talk to the marketing students I teach, I always say, remember, you've got to ground this in reality. Like, you can't pull a Punch's Pizza at every restaurant and say, we're going to give away free pizza to everyone who comes in on this day, unless you can show me a marketing payoff for that. Like, unless you can promise me an upsale in beer on that night, there's no reason I'm willing to let that free pizza go out the door, So I think there's a lot of early on in social media, it was all about, oh yeah, let's give away a bunch of free stuff. And that'll make people love us, and we'll measure all the friends that we get, and that'll be a real metric, and that's not a real metric. Like, that's warm and fuzzy, that's great, I feel better about myself.
There's some restrictions on the tattoo, I mean, it has to be a certain size or anything like
Not that I know of.
Wow.
that. It's good.
Yeah. And it's under here.
Yeah.
Speaking of early social media, isn't this all just repeating itself?
Yeah.
And it's going to continue as long as we're in a society with laws, with conservatives and liberals, that one wants to govern this and micromanage it. The other side, let's be free and run with it. Why not? And like most things, from the censorship of movies, I forget the gentleman who headed the department. He wanted to censor every movie that came out of Hollywood, I think in the 20s and 30s. Woody something, or anyway, I'm sorry, I don't remember the person's name. However, that was defeated. Prohibition came and prohibition went. It seems every time there's a new technology with television, radio, you name it, now the internet is all around us. This technology is all around us.
Yeah.
You go in Best Buy and I can sit there and name where all the cameras are just by looking up. It's swinging. It seems like in our society, everything always has to swing on both sides of the pendulum before it finds its middle ground.
Yeah.
And then, if this company is so interested in my private life and what I say on Facebook, do I really want to talk to them? Because how many cameras are in my cube and how many people are watching me pick my nose, and it's another Office Space movie in the making.
Yeah.
That's so it's interesting how, when, and what kind of lessons can we really learn from all of this, and then have everybody take a breath.
Right. Well, and I think, like, I often tell my marketing classes, I'm like, well, there's the marketing side of me that's really excited by all of this. Like, Google ads can be targeted towards my search habits, and that makes the ad more relevant to me, and I'm more likely to click on it. And Google says, isn't that convenient? The ads you're seeing are the things you might want to buy. And that's great for the marketer too. And that's how they try to sell it to the person. And then there's like the human side of me. That's like, but wait a minute, you know what I might be interested in buying. Like you're going to advertise those shoes to me because something I said somewhere online may have indicated that I might like to buy those shoes. And then the marketing says, well, yeah, isn't that great? You're seeing the ad you want. You don't have to sit through a denture paste commercial, like to watch your next YouTube movie, because we know denture paste isn't relevant to you. You know, like, but we do know that you might be interested in, you know, buying this product at Zappos.com, you know, because you were on that webpage yesterday and you left from this page, and we know you looked at 17 items before you left, and one of those, and all those items were red. So you might like this red shoe over here. You know, all that sort of that profile we leave builds up an awesome, convenient